I've more than doubled my traffic just in the 2 months that I've been gone from corporate. And it's just an amazing feeling. I feel like it kind of just solidifies that I made the right decision. Some days I'm like, how was I doing this working a full-time job? I only got 2 things done today. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm doing so much more. I feel like my content is so much better. And I just believe in it so much more. And I'm just starting to feel like it really kind of shows in the numbers.
That was Brandi Crawford, and this is episode number 171 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marly of the blog Namely Marly. I'm your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. I'm so excited about today's episode because I know you're going to love it so much. I can't wait. But before we get started, I just want to share with you the review of the week. This one is from Music Madge. It's titled, I Love Chopped. Madge says, thanks for creating such a helpful and inspiring podcast, Marly. I enjoy listening to conversations with my fellow food bloggers. In particular, I love how Marly tackles both tactical tips and great results, plus heart-led strategies to make blogging more enjoyable and rewarding. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Madge. I'm so glad you're enjoying the podcast. You know, it feels good to know that the goal I set forth when I started this podcast is actually coming forward because I don't know. I tell people when we start the interview that I like to imagine that we're just sitting at a cup of coffee and we're talking about food blogging and you all are listening in. And maybe you feel like you're part of that as well, which is great. If you'd like to be a featured listener in a future episode, just leave a review of the Chopped Podcast on iTunes. I would love to be reading your name next time. On to today's topic. Today, I'm talking with Brandi Crawford. You remember Brandi, right? She's from episode number 159. Brandi experienced such tremendous growth in only a short period of time as a food blogger. So many of you have been so inspired by her. Well, today, Brandi is back on the podcast and it's only been a year, but she's already experienced even more great results and she has so many exciting things to share. I think you're going to love hearing from her and what's been going on with her in this past year. We also have some exciting news to share about this episode, about ways you can learn directly from Brandi on the tools she's used to grow her audience. And also, as part of this, I'm sharing about my SEO review that I experienced last year and how I have used that to transform an old blog and how I've kind of systematically gone through and updated and changed my old content. Brandi lives right here in Kansas City, so we have been able to get together and share our passion for spreadsheets. We're like spreadsheet geeks together. I'm here to tell you it can be such a game changer just to have a friend that you can sit down and talk about these things with. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, food blogging can be so overwhelming, and especially, you know, when you've got a lot of changes to do in addition to creating new content, you've got a lot going on. There's a lot of like, you know, I imagine those old time shows where there people would be like plates. Why would people want to rotate plates on a stick? I have no idea, but maybe like imagine juggling a bunch of balls. There's so many pieces going on and so many things going that, you know, you start to feel overwhelmed and eventually you think kind of what's the point? But meeting and connecting with other people who have the same passion, it can really make a big difference. And I like for you to imagine that you're just participating with this conversation with us so that you feel a part of this and you feel like, you know, you're getting that same dose of inspiration. I'm so excited about this conversation. I'm so excited about the inspiration that I feel just being a participant of it and for you listening in on it. I think we should get straight to it. Here's today's featured discussion with Brandi Crawford. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Brandi Crawford. She's of the site Stay Snatched, and she's also author of the book Super Easy Air Fryer Cookbook, and she's back on the show today. Hey Brandi, welcome to the Chop Podcast.
Hey, Marly, I'm so excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you back too. I think, you know, we had such a great discussion last time and I've gotten so much great feedback from that episode. So I'm really glad to have you back on the show.
Yeah.
The other reason I'm really excited to have you back is because there have been a lot of changes since the last time that we talked, because you were on the show, I think last year this time. Was that right?
Yes, it was. It was February 2018. last
And
year.
it
Yes.
was so exciting to have you on the show then because you had made such great strides after having just started your food. I mean, not just, but like, basically you'd been on your food blog for about a year. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to recall, you were like 300 to 400,000 page views a month. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So in January 2018, I had just reached 350,000 page views a month, and then we did the podcast in February.
Yes. And
Yes.
so since then, you have had even more, lots of changes. First of all, you published a book,
I
and
did.
yeah, that was pretty exciting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so what's interesting is when we recorded the episode, I was going through like very final negotiations for the cookbook, and I'd actually even kind of started like thinking about recipes and even testing some recipes, but I couldn't disclose that I was working on it. And so I had started 2018 with the cookbook deal, worked on that for several months, and then the cookbook came out in August, and it's an air fryer cookbook with 100 super easy recipes, very much in line with my brand and my website. I focus on just quick and easy, healthy recipes, many of which take 30 minutes or less to make. And so it uses an air fryer. And so for people that don't know what an air fryer is, it's a machine that can fry food. You place it on a basket, and it kind of works like an oven and can provide crunchy food with using just a little bit of oil.
It's like a turbo oven.
It is.
Yeah.
I am just so fascinated with it. So, yes, it's awesome.
Yeah. And, after I talked with you, I was inspired to go out and get my own air fryer, and I love them.
Yes,
They're great.
I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only sad thing is it kind of freaks my dog out. So I have to either
Oh,
put him
that's
in the
funny.
bedroom or I put him outside to run the air fryer.
That is so funny. I
I
see
know.
dogs get really freaked out about even Instant Pots sometimes too. So that's funny.
Really?
Yes, because the steam, like when you have to pressure release the
Yes.
steam,
Freaks
I've
him
seen
out.
like videos of dogs just like going crazy with that.
Well, it's really funny because our dog is just mostly super calm and collected. And, we used to have another dog that he was the one that got freaked out. So this is the only thing he's ever been freaked out about, and that is the air fryer,
Oh, that is so funny.
isn't it?
So
Yeah.
funny.
Well, the other, you've had other things going on with your site as well. For example, you recently quit your job. So you want to talk about that?
I did, and it's so interesting because we recorded this episode in February, and one of the questions you asked me was, "Do you plan on ever quitting?" And I was like, "No, I really love my corporate job, and I love the blog. I work at night and on the weekends. I found a way to balance both of them." And in November, 2 months ago, I quit my job. So all these people, even bloggers, so bloggers who've heard the episode, kind of reached out to me and have networked with me, and everyone was just floored that even my
Yeah. You
family
said you weren't
that I
going to
quit my
quit.
job. I said I wasn't going to quit. But I think that even after I got the cookbook deal, I didn't plan to quit. I was going to kind of work on both. There just started to become a point where I was just getting so overwhelmed with doing both.
Yeah.
And then my blog just kind of took off. I think that every single month, since I've started this, I've been at this for 2 years. I'm just amazed at, things that I'm accomplishing, traffic that I'm reaching, and then kind of just the money that I'm making too, that I just wouldn't have envisioned myself a year ago from today doing kind of the things that I'm doing now. So there just became a point, I would say in the summer of 2018, where I just felt like I was working a ton, and why. And every single day I'd go into work at my corporate job, and I loved it at one point, but my passion for blogging was just starting to really exceed kind of what I was doing in my day job. And I think the number one thing that was holding me back was just kind of that sense of security. I had a job that paid very well. I'm a CPA, and so I worked heavy in a data analyst role, lots of Excel and things like that I'm really excited about. And I had a great work-life balance. And so I just had to make the decision of, okay, I've got this job that pays well, I've great work-life balance. What is going to happen if I leave that? And so once I started kind of obviously running the numbers and putting together spreadsheets of, if I left my job, what would my income look like? What would my financial situation be? And once I started to see that I'm going to be okay, like even if I even created scenarios of, what if my income was 50% less? If it was 75% less,
Yes.
would I still be able to feel comfortable and live a comfortable life? And so once I got that squared away, I was like, oh my God, I've got to do this. Like, it would just be awesome to just wake up and cook food and develop recipes and work on my blog every day as opposed to only nights and weekends. And so I just kind of worked to move into that direction. And in November, I quit. And so I've been working on it for 2 months full time now.
And how does it feel? Do you like, is it like what you thought it was going to be?
Yes and no. Some things are really, really great. Like it just feels really great to wake up, brush my teeth, shower, and walk across the hallway to my office each day versus getting into my car. And I worked like a 7 to 4 time. So a lot of times I could beat traffic, but it was still a commute. I would still commute 30 minutes a day. And so not having that is awesome. And I wake up later now. I used to work out before work every day at 5:30 a.m. And now I get up, I start my day, I start working, and then I go work at 9 and I come back and I finish my work. That part is amazing. One of the things that bothered me a lot was just I'm less active just in terms of walking. And you and I kind of talked about this, and I would hear bloggers talk about it all the time. And I'm like, no, I have a dog. I can go out and walk my dog and that's going to be enough. But I'm like noticing that no, that's not even enough. And I haven't even mentioned this to you yet. So I recently got an under the desk treadmill and a standing desk for my office.
Wow.
And so within the last, I think I got it maybe 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, maybe, I've been getting in more steps by just walking and working. And so I can edit photos. I can even do some blogging, like keyword research and all kinds of that while I'm actually walking on this treadmill. And
have you shared a picture of this on Instagram? I would love to see that.
I can. I've shared it on my stories.
Okay.
But I do need to share it on my feed, and I probably will do that because I've been getting tons of questions about it on my stories.
So you're actually standing on a treadmill that fits underneath your desk?
Mm-hmm. I can just move it out. And so I do have to move it out when I want my chair to kind of come in, but I can just kind of scoot it out of the way still under my desk up against a wall. And then I got like a standing desk platform where I kind of just raise it.
Yes. I've
and
seen
then
those at
lower
Costco.
it. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize Costco had them. I got it on Amazon.
Oh, well, yeah.
I should have
Amazon's
looked at
great too.
Costco
But yeah,
first.
I mean, I think they have them. Is it like electric? So you kind of push a button and it goes up?
No, it's not electric, but you do just pull a button and pull it up.
Nice.
So it's kind of the same. There's like a lever you pull and you can push it down. And so that's the part that I think has been the most frustrating is that I feel like in 2 months I've been moving a lot less. And so just trying to still get active. Like if you're a blogger, you're at it for hours and hours and hours a day, brainstorming other ways to kind of be active.
Stay active.
Then,
I do have what I have is a stair step in my office. And so sometimes I just go and, step up on it. It's like one of those, it's like multi-levels and you can change the level of it or whatever. And I don't know. That's like my compromise for now, but I'm like Ian, you're under the desk.
Yeah. I think you'd love it since you go on walks outside during the winter. I think that you love this as an option. And I also have my Apple Watch. And so now I've just set a goal because in 2 hours, I can usually do 3 miles. And so sometimes I break it up. If I just walk for an hour, maybe get a mile and a half or something in. But for the day, my goal is to try to walk for 3 miles a day on it. And you don't have to do a fast paced walk on this thing. So
that is really nice. And at least, throughout the day, you've gotten some steps in. That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you get tired of it, you can just adjust the desk down and sit down.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly
very cool. I you are such a creative problem solver. I love it.
I had to do something. I'm like, this is just driving me nuts. And what's interesting is I would hear people say this all of the time. And I'm like, nope, that wouldn't be me. If I worked from home, I'd figure it out. And then when I started to look at that, I was not moving as much as I thought I would. Like even going to the gym and coming back home, it still just wasn't enough. And so, I had to.
Well, and it's kind of part of your brand, isn't it? This, trying to stay healthy. So I think it's kind of, you got to think that people that are your audiences, they're dealing with this as well. So
yeah, that's true. Good point.
So you're being a role model to your audience about, hey, I'm motivated to stay snatched.
Exactly. That is exactly right, Marly.
I love it. Okay, so the other really big thing that happened to you this year as far as your food blog is you reached a huge milestone in traffic. Do you want to talk about that?
I did. And so when I quit my job, November 2018, I was at 500,000 page views in a month, 448,000 thousand unique visitors. And so January 2019, 2 months after I quit, I'm now at 1.3 million page views and 1.1 million unique visitors. And so I've more
Wow.
than doubled my traffic just in the 2 months that I've been gone from corporate. And it's just an amazing feeling. I feel like it kind of just solidifies that I made the right decision.
Yeah.
I've just, even though sometimes time gets away from me, I feel like some days I'm like, how was I doing this working a full time job? I only got two things done
Yes.
today. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm doing so much more. I feel like my content is so much better. And I just believe in it so much more. And I'm just starting to feel like it really kind of shows in the numbers.
Yeah, and you've got the creative. I mean, I don't know about you, but especially a job like you had where you're, you know, being a CPA and working with data, that's very mind focused, and I think that can really drain you sometimes. So
Hmm.
now you have a lot more
Yeah,
creative energy to put into your blog.
exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I love that. I love the other thing I really love is the fact that, you're in Kansas City and I'm in Kansas City, so we've been able to get together, and I've really, really
Yes.
enjoyed our conversations. We have so much fun.
We do, and it's so interesting is because I feel like you're my first blogger friend. You're the
Aw,
first blogger that I've like met in person, and I did start to realize after my first year of blogging, how much I was working kind of in a silo
yeah.
and how I wasn't really interacting with other bloggers enough. And so I do think that that's just like a critical part of blogging is that you have to be able to talk to someone who understands your situation, things that you're going through, the good and the bad, because my family and my friends, they can't relate a lot of the times
Yeah.
to things that I'm kind of going through and stuff like that. And so I've loved meeting up with you in person, geeking out on our spreadsheets and all that
Yes.
good stuff. It's been awesome.
That's something that we have in common is that we both really have an affinity for spreadsheets, and so we kind of shared. People would love how much we geek out. We're like sharing our screens and like, look at this spreadsheet that I put together, and you're sharing yours, and I'm
Exactly.
sharing mine. It's really kind of fun.
Yes, I love it. Oh, and it also like the thing in corporate, since I worked in data analysis, this is one of the things that I really loved. And so I do feel like us geeking out or the spreadsheets kind of still brings me back to like that corporate life, and I can still use
Yes.
those skills.
Yes.
So
I've said many
it's
times, I
awesome.
think the thing that I miss the most about corporate is, people sitting around a conference room, although people talk about meetings as if they're terrible. I actually really enjoyed them. I like, these people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different skill levels, talking creatively about a problem that we want to solve. And I
Yes.
love that.
Yes, I love that too. Meetings that had a purpose. I think
Yes.
sometimes when people don't like meetings, it's like I would get on my calendar a meeting about a meeting. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why are we meeting about another meeting?
I
Like, come on,
know.
that's a waste of time.
Yes.
But no, I do like the sharing ideas because you just learn so much from being in like a collective
Yeah.
environment.
I'm what I call a kinesthetic learner. I mean, other people have called it that. I just say it about myself, and that is I learn by doing. But also, to me, doing is being in a room, and you're showing me the spreadsheet and how you've set it up, and it's like, oh, that's a great idea, and so that's a great way to learn, I think.
I agree.
So one of the ideas that we have kicked around and now we're going to be doing, I'm really excited about, is we are going to be putting together a webinar and presenting it to everybody on February 28th, which is Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. And the goal of this webinar it's basically how to grow your food blog, purposely grow your food blog with Google Analytics and top organization practices, because I feel
Yes.
like, as we've talked, you and I, Brandy, that we've really come up with I don't think you can really create this formula for success, but you can create a formula for uh, having practices and business practices that help you succeed.
Exactly. I think one of the things that when it comes to food blogging is, like you said, there's no blueprint of how to be successful, but there are ways for you to see what is working, see what's not working, so that you can respond accordingly and maybe do more of what's working and maybe do less of what's not working. And I
Yes.
think that diving into the data, looking at Google Analytics is like the blueprint. That's the blueprint to at least know what to focus your time on.
Right. And I think so many people that I've talked with feel like Google Analytics is this big abyss. Like it's like this, dark cave. And we go there and we maybe look at one or two things like how many page views do
Hmm.
I have this month? Or,
Hmm.
maybe what's my top post? What's getting the most traffic this month? But really not knowing what to do with it other than that.
Agreed. Yeah, I hear that a lot. And to piggyback off that, there's just so many basic things that come with like just brainstorming and troubleshooting. Like I think most people know how to go in and look at kind of what their top post is, but I think that sometimes people need more guidance on what to do when something isn't working. Like what questions should they be asking themselves, and then where should they go in Google Analytics? I just see a lot of questions and comments in Facebook groups of, this post used to bring me a lot of traffic and now I'm not getting any traffic from it. Why? And it's like, okay, have you looked at that post in Google Analytics to see and probe kind of where the traffic was coming from and where it's coming from now? And so I think that if we can kind of give people tips on, okay, I lost traffic on this post, kind of the next step of brainstorming and actually digging into the data to see. Because a lot of times what I find is if I lose traffic on a post, it's because maybe I used to share this Facebook video and it was doing really well last month, but I didn't share it on Facebook this month. Or
Uh,
maybe a pin died off and I need to go in and maybe repin that pin or add it to my tribes. Or even worse, if something loses a Google ranking, you used to get a lot of traffic from it on Google, but now Google's downgraded you for whatever reason. Maybe someone else created similar post and they answered question in their post, but you didn't answer any questions. And so I think that once you kind of start diving into the data and you can see what used to bring you traffic from that, what the source was versus what the source is now, you can then kind of continue to go down that hole to see what's going on. But I
yes.
think a lot of people need kind of those example questions and examples of seeing how to troubleshoot that.
Yes, and you're going to be sharing, your screen and showing how you actually do this rather than, you know, I don't, it seems like I've gone and tried to figure out some things myself. And first of all, a lot of the content that's out there about Google Analytics is not specific to food bloggers. So it's really different and it doesn't feel applicable sometimes.
Oh, that's true. Every time I've tried to Google things,
Yeah.
it's usually about online businesses and
Yeah.
e-commerce and things like that. And so I'm like, this doesn't really apply. And so I think that kind of having a template, a layout with graphs and charts so that you can visually see the data and the posts, it works wonders.
Yeah, and for me, I know you feel the same way coming from a business background. I am used to, the businesses I've worked with where we do have these kinds of analytics and these kinds of reports that we're typically presenting to our board of directors, so we have to have all that stuff together. And so in some ways I kind of feel like this helps a food blogger translate those kind of metrics that we need to run as a business and help us make the decisions to grow our site as well.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And everything that you just said definitely holds weight for me. I feel like anytime I had a subset of data, like let's take January, for example, we just closed out January as months as food bloggers. And so in my corporate world, we'd be closing out the books as a corporate company, generating income. I always had to know the story behind how much money we made that month and stuff like that. Like I had to be prepared to answer those questions. And so I feel like as a food blogger, once your month closes, you should know what were my top posts this month? How much money did I make this month?
Yes.
And so on and so on.
Right. And so having, you know, the the ability to go into Google Analytics and feel confident that you know what you're looking for, that you know the things that can help you grow your blog, I think is so important. But also then how to get that information and download it into a report that you can have ongoing. Because, like you said, if we were looking at January and then a few months later we're looking at June or July and we get freaked out like, oh my God, my traffic has gone down so much, because that's kind of a typical thing that happens. But you can't compare June to January. You have to compare June to last June. So having these
Hmm.
reports over time, I think, will make a big difference.
It really will. And I think that one of the things that I noticed being a new blogger is it's really great to look at what happened last year, but even a lot of times for a new blogger, looking at last year isn't helpful. And so, for example, my top post right now, one of my top performing posts is a post I created in August of 2018. And so, if tomorrow that post completely fell off, I wouldn't be able to go look back at, oh, how did that post do last year? Because it wasn't even there. And so, I'd have to kind of strategize different methods. And so, I think that having everything kind of in a spreadsheet that kind of continues to build on each other in terms of months and in terms of years will give you just so much access to data to answer questions. But even if you're like a newer blogger like me, we still have other tips on how you can troubleshoot why, that post may not be performing.
Yeah. And you know what? I just thought of another reason I really love this is because, we're constantly hearing people say, don't compare yourself to other people. But
Hmm.
I think in some ways, as a strategy for content development, we oftentimes fight ourselves comparing ourselves to others because we're like,
Yeah.
oh, I see on Pinterest or on Instagram, everybody's talking about Buddha bowls. So I got to do Buddha bowls on my site. But
Hmm.
I think what I'm hearing you say is like when you know Google Analytics and you're able to get in there and really understand what's working, you're truly able to provide content that's best for your audience rather than just kind of pulling it out of the air, comparing yourself to other people.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I love that. I also, the other thing I thought of when you were just talking about this top performing post from August is that it kind of helps you break down why that performed so well so
Oh,
that
yeah.
you kind of create a formula for success for your site.
Oh, yeah. So I've been creating a lot more recipes like that top performing post from
I bet I
August.
would be too.
Once I saw it take off, I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to do more of that. And that goes back into, so one of the things that I hear you talk about a lot on Chopped with the guests that you have are knowing your audience. And I just feel like there's so many layers and there's just so many different things that go into that. And so, for example, that I feel like I know my audience a little bit more because they really like that post. And that post is doing well on Instagram, it's doing well on Google, and it's doing well on Pinterest. And so while I don't consider the traffic that I get from Google and Pinterest my core audience because it's a little more bouncy, it's still a part of my audience. So it's still a part of people that are interested in my niche of recipes. And so I know that people in general on Google, Pinterest, or even Instagram or my email list, they really like this type of recipe. So if I do more of that, it should do well on all fronts.
Yes. And how would you know that otherwise? It would be, it would be like shooting at a target in the dark. You just really don't know
Exactly.
what you're doing. So I love
Exactly.
this. I'm so excited about it. I think it's really going to be helpful to understand, like you said, where your traffic's coming from, what kind of, knowing your audience better, and also, what kind of content really appeals to my audience.
Exactly.
Just so everybody knows that it's not only about Google Analytics, we're also going to be going into spreadsheets because it's something that Brandi and I love so much.
Yes, yes. Like you've been doing a ton of work on SEO
Yeah.
and using your spreadsheets for that.
Yeah, I had an SEO audit last year and I learned a lot. My site is older and so I learned a lot about, some of the stuff I was doing early on and maybe some bad habits that had happened over the years that a good example would be alt images. I was using alt images to describe the the recipe for Pinterest because,
Hmm.
it was kind of a common practice that when people would share your content from Pinterest, Pinterest would pick up the alt image
Right.
description. And I learned
Hmm.
another way of doing that so that I'm not, I don't want to make Pinterest happy and Google is not happy. That's not good. It's not a formula for
Right.
success. So I
Right.
found some strategies to make all of that work, which now what I have to do then is I have to go back and I have to go change all those alt images on those old posts. And there's a lot of kind of cleanup work like that I have to do on a lot of my old recipes. And so I created this spreadsheet that basically helps me track, I downloaded every recipe I have into that spreadsheet and I have a lot of columns where I track basically, everything I want to do to make sure that I want to make sure that post feels 100% the way I want it to. It's completely up to date as far as SEO is concerned.
And so you also have a plugin that allowed you to download all of your posts right
Yes,
into that.
exactly. And I'm going to talk about that some more on the webinar. There's a very
Yep.
easy process for downloading. I know it feels a little overwhelming to think about all your old content,
And that's why I wanted to point that out, that no, you don't have to go in and manually type up every post. You can just download
Yes,
it using a
exactly.
plugin.
That could take a while, couldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a plugin that does that very simply and easily. And then what I did is I create on my spreadsheet, I have, it's kind of, it basically tracks the progress I've done. So I've created these formulas in the spreadsheet that tracks how much progress I have. So like, let's say if I have 100 posts and I have 5 of them complete, then I'm
Mhm.
5% done. I have 95% to go. And so I like having those kinds of markers at the top of my
Mhm.
spreadsheets to help me know what I have left to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I call it
No,
gamifying my work. It's like turns it into a game, and then I'm
it does.
very compelled to keep going and get it going.
Yeah, with a project like that, it's really easy to kind of just get lost in the weeds. But if
Oh
you have
yeah,
something at the top,
yeah,
you can see, okay, this is how I'm plugging along.
yeah. And I love that. Another thing I really love about the spreadsheet too is that I can hire a virtual assistant to help me on certain tasks, and because
Hmm.
it's on Google Drive, as she makes changes and updates the spreadsheet, I can easily go in and see what kind of progress is being made.
That's awesome.
I know. I love it. And I like to do it myself first before I hire an assistant to help me, because then I have a good idea how many I can get done in an hour, and I have an idea of what to expect from the assistant as well. So it's kind of like a work tracking mode as well.
Hmm.
Though
Oh, that's a
it's
good
worked
point.
really well. And I have found that the people I've hired to help me too, they find the same inspiration in seeing that number change. And because I have it by
Yes.
column and overall as well. So each column updates. So let's say if I have an assistant working just on updating those alt images and I have, 100 left to be done, I know exactly where
Hmm.
she's at and she knows where she's at too. So it feels kind of inspiring that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that.
Another thing I just did recently is I added a new column to this um, spreadsheet where I track the confidence I feel in each and every post. And let me explain this.
Hmm.
You may not feel this, Brandi. I don't know. You tell me what you think about this. But because my site is older and I do have a lot of old recipes, some of which I don't even remember. And so I gave each recipe a confidence rating. So am I 50% confident this is a good recipe? Am I, or even just the post in general, am I 75% confident or am I 100% confident? And I have a
Hmm.
good number of those that I'm 100% confident in. But there are some that it's like, oh, I'm not exactly certain because it's been so long since I made it.
Yes, yes. And I do have some of those, even though I've only been blogging for 2 years. The recipes that I put out exactly 2 years ago, there's some of those that they didn't take off maybe in
Ah,
the beginning. And
yes.
so I'll get a comment on the post. And before I even read the comment, I'm like, oh my God, someone's commenting on this post. I forgot about this thing.
Yes.
Is that even a good recipe? Are the photos good? Are there any tips in there? And so
Yes.
I'll go look at the comment. But that's kind of my trigger that I need to go back and update that post. And it would be nice to be able to have already identified that post on the front end versus the back end when
Yeah.
someone's already tried the recipe, that probably it's got terrible photos in there and zero tips. When I first started blogging, I had, this is a great recipe, you should make it. Here's some photos and here's the recipe. Like there was no content
Yes.
in a lot of my old posts. So that is awesome. I
Yeah.
love that idea.
I feel really good about it. I have this goal in 2019 that I want to feel 100% confident about all the content on my site. I want I want to feel so good about my content that I am internally linking that every post has an internal link and that
Mm.
I am sharing it on social media, because if I don't feel confident enough to share that on social media, that's a pretty good sign that something needs to be done to update that post.
Oh, that I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, the share on social media. Oh my gosh, I've got so many that I probably wouldn't share on social media. They need to be updated.
Yeah.
It's just funny. I had one this week that I just completely gutted the post. I changed the title. I've even changed the type of like what I'm pairing with it. I took every single photo out. I switched up the recipe. I made the recipe better. I made the instructions better. And I was just looking at it like, the only thing that is left standing here is the link. I'm using the
Wow.
same link, but I just completely changed the recipe because it 100% isn't something that I would share on social media. And so, oh, I love that
Yeah, now
confidence
I don't
level.
actually update the link. I think Casey even told me that the link doesn't matter. Do you agree with that?
Right. And if you update the link, you have to redirect. And so
Yes.
there's just no benefit to doing that. So I left the link exactly the same and just changed everything else about the post.
Yeah, and don't you feel so much better about it too?
I do, and I can republish it. I added a video to it. And so I'm starting to try to go back through and update a lot of those posts. And if it's not a good one, then it just needs to be tossed.
And there can be a lot of
So
reasons somebody wouldn't feel good. It may be that the recipe is 100% spot on, but like you said, it could be something in the content, or it could be that the photo is not as good as something that you want to share on Pinterest or whatever. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, to update old content.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's kind of that's my goal in this webinar, would be to talk about basically SEO updating. I know SEO and keyword research is a big portion of what people are doing these days. And in fact, the third spreadsheet that I will be sharing, or third topic that we'll be covering in the webinar, will be keyword research and your editorial planning. So I have a separate spreadsheet that I use to track keyword research. Basically, what I do is when I go through and I spend some, allotted time every month figuring out what recipes I want to be doing either this month or the month afterwards. And,
Hmm.
what keywords are doing really well right now, what looks like I could be competitive with. And so I put those all in a spreadsheet, and then I have then I decide from that which recipes are going to be done in which month. And again, I
Hmm.
gamify this by I have 4 things I have to do for every post.
Hmm.
I have to test the recipe. I have to shoot the recipe. I have to create the draft post, and suddenly I can't remember what the fourth one is anymore. Anyway, I have all of those in columns, and so as I get
Hmm.
those done, I write yes in that box, and it again the post will tell me, that spreadsheet will tell me how much work I have done and how much I have yet to do. So like I may be 50% done with my February content right now, or I may already be starting on March, so I've got 25% done in March. I love knowing exactly where I'm at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
I love it. And so I feel like, if anybody wanted to hear more about the process I use for creating posts, I have another episode where I dedicated entirely to that. And I'll leave that as a link in the show notes page.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think the goal of this webinar is that you would, as a participant, would feel, confident that you know Google Analytics enough to know your audience. You would feel really good about the content on your site, and that you have a plan for how you're going to update it. And finally, you would have an editorial calendar and spreadsheet that would help you plan for future content.
Hmm. So I didn't go into a lot of detail about what the Google Analytics spreadsheets would look
Well, let's talk about
like
that.
yours. And so for the things that I'm going to present, I've got a spreadsheet that will analyze your top 10 posts. Google Analytics allows you to export data for even up to 50 to 100 posts. So even if you wanted to extend that to say, I want to see what my top 50 posts are, I've got a template where you can download the data from Google Analytics with step-by-step instructions, and you can look at that data by month. So you can see an overall view, what your page views were for your entire website by month, with a chart that kind of charts it out so you can see what the peaks and valleys are. And then there's another set of data that will show you the same view for your top posts. How many page views were you getting by month for each of your top posts? And you can see a chart that kind of charts out your peaks and valleys. And then there's another tab for the source of your traffic by month. So you can see how many page views were you getting from Google for every single month with a chart. How many were you getting from Pinterest, Facebook, every single month with the chart. And so that, just seeing it visually like that, you can see, like when Google did a huge algorithm update in August and a lot of bloggers were impacted. This chart will allow you to see if you were impacted by that or not, just by seeing if your Google traffic remained steady, if it went up, or if it declined. And so you can see it from so many different levels and be able to drill in at a overarching view of what your traffic is every month, and then drill down into what it is by post, and then the source of the traffic too.
Brandi, do you think this is what's helped you grow your site, is having this understanding of Google Analytics, and also, just working these spreadsheets on a regular basis?
For sure. I think that, and kind of what I was saying earlier, it just really allows you to tap into what you should be focusing on. For example, I post recipes to Facebook, but Facebook isn't a large source of my traffic. I'm at this point, Pinterest recently started picking up for me. So I'm 25% Pinterest, and then mostly everything else is Google. And I get maybe 10% from Facebook. And so to me, that tells me I don't need to put a lot of stock into Facebook. I'm still going to share there because I want a presence there. But my main focus has been Google and SEO updating. And then after that, it's going to be Pinterest. And so I think that once you actually dive into the numbers and see kind of what's working, or you could take a different step and say, hey, Facebook is only 10%, but I want it to be more. So I want to work more on Facebook. I think that it just allows you to make better informed decisions on where you want to take your business and what you should be focusing on. I just think that it's sad when, I talk to people and they're like, oh man, I thought that Facebook was bringing me all this traffic. I've been working hard on it. But when I look at the numbers, I'm doing better on Google than I am Facebook. And so that just kind of allows you to say, I'm going to stop focusing less on this and do more of this. And then I just think that once you see the data, it also allows you to see, man, I've been working hard, like to look at, like I'm looking at one of my graphs now just to see like kind of things going up, or even when things kind of just get a little bouncy, like you can just so many, even my like emotions are kind of tied to it. I just either get happy or I know I need to do more work on this type thing. You just have a better sense of kind of how things are working for your business.
I feel like it kind of reminds me of, you watch these movies or these stories where somebody is just struggling and trying to make it work and it's not working. And then they just change and like, okay, this is where I should have been all along. So hearing you talk about like, I really want Facebook to do better, but you're spending all this energy and it's just not happening. But if you look at the data and it tells you the story that Pinterest is doing great, that you could put your efforts there and you'll finally have that success.
And it's another thing. It can help enhance your decision if you want to hire someone. Like if Pinterest is doing really well, maybe you should hire someone, a VA, to help you out with Pinterest. And so there's just so many elements that are tied to, once you know what the numbers are saying and what your next step should be, kind of what your next business move should be.
I love it. Oh, I'm so excited about this webinar. I really feel like it's going to give people the tools to run their business and their blog like a business, basically.
Yes, for sure.
So we want everybody to know that all webinar participants will receive these spreadsheet templates. And so, you'll be able to take this information. You'll see us actually using these spreadsheets, but you'll also get the template so you can use them for yourself.
And it may be like a copy and paste format. So you'll have all of the instructions of what you need to do, and then you can just drag and drop numbers into it and see how things work for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the exciting thing is to make sure you attend this webinar on February 28th at 1 p.m. And we will obviously be spending a good amount of time presenting, but we will also be sure to include some time for Q&A. That's why you want to be on this live webinar. It's going to be at, like I said, 1 p.m. Central Time, and it's going to be for an hour and a half, so 90 minutes, so that we'll have a lot of time to get into the details, but also some time to get into your specific questions, because that's important.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. So if you are interested in participating in our webinar, we would love to have you there. Just go to chopped.academy/grow. That is where you'll be able to register. You'll be able to get on the waiting list. We only have a few spots, so if you're not able to get into the actual webinar, we'll have a waiting list and we'll be in contact with you as soon as possible if that opens up. So
awesome.
I am so excited to have you on, Brandi. We just have great conversations every time we're together. Would you be interested in telling people how they can find you online?
Sure. I think the easiest way would be Instagram, actually. My Instagram is stay_snatched, and send me a DM or comment on one of my posts, and I'd love to connect.
I love it. Brandi, thanks for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a really good time.
I love it. Thanks, Marly.
Thanks to Brandi Crawford for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. You will definitely want to be a part of this webinar on growing your website. So be sure and go to chopped.academy/grow to sign up today so you can get in on early bird pricing. And we only have a few seats available for this webinar, so I want to make sure you're part of that. I hope you are inspired by today's discussion with Brandi. I know I was. If you're struggling to figure out what to do with your blog or how to understand Google Analytics so that you can experience phenomenal growth, or even just stay organized with updating your old content, I feel like today's show delivered on so much of that. Thanks to everyone for your support of the Chopped podcast. Your reviews on iTunes and Stitcher make such a big impact. It only takes a few seconds of your time and it really means so much. And of course, I would love to be reading your name as a featured listener next week. If you feel inspired by today's discussion, take a snapshot of yourself listening or take a screenshot and share it with me using #ChoppedPodcast on Instagram. You inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.